Okay, good morning. So this is our what we call first Thomas C. Burke Memorial Symposium. Thomas was a kind man, scholar. I just accidentally met him on the road, and I'll tell that story later. But he became a friend. Uh, he impressed me as a person, as a scholar, as a very curious person. So this seminar or symposium that we're doing, we're trying to explore topics that Thomas tried to analyze. And we have tried to put broad heads called language, grammar, prosody, and music. And I'm glad that many people from India have joined. Professor Dubey, Rudra Bikram, we have Gauri Kulkarni. We're also glad that Tom's niece, Kathy, is with us. And we have our associates who were helping Tom, learning from Tom, associating with Tom, are also here. And we expect Professor Ashok Aklujkar to join in an hour. So with that, we will start our meeting. So it will be, first hour will be recollections through slides and talks by our friends. First Gopi, then Bala, then Maya, and then Paul. And then we may listen from any other people who might say a few words. Then we go to our Ashok Aklujkar section. He's not keeping very well, so he will come. And then we'll have the two papers we have scheduled today, one by Dr. Kushagra Aniket and one by Prem Nagar. So that will happen about another 2 hours. So that's the schedule. Agopi, you can go.
Okay, thank you, Bijoy. Let me first put up my slides. Okay, good morning, everyone. I thank Tom, Paul, and the others on the organizing committee for giving me this time to talk about my association with Tom. It's going to be a brief overview of my interaction, and let me apologize that after I finish my piece, I will have to leave because I got to be engaged elsewhere, babysitting a couple of my grandchildren that I couldn't get out of. But I hope to listen to the other presentations from the recording later on. So Tom was born in 1934, and an unusual piece of information about Tom that I got from Kathy and her mother was that when he was 5, his grandfather wrote a book about him. And that tells you something about the kind of person Tom was. This is a very neat little book that they sent me a copy, and it has the various antics of Tom when he was young. And you could see in it that there was something about Tom that stood out, which, unlike normally children writing books about their grandparents, here you had a grandparent writing a book about a grandchild, and that too when he was 5. And so I think that sort of presaged what we were going to see in Tom in later years. Tom moved on from Reed College, did work in Chicago, and went on to Berlin for further studies. Got interested more and more in linguistics. And while he was in Germany, he was learning German and developed an interest in Sanskrit there. And that's when he decided that he would pursue Sanskrit more deeply and moved from there to Benares, where he joined the Sanskrit College in Banaras. And to be able to fund his stay in India and learn Sanskrit, he started teaching German at the Banaras, at the Sanskrit College there. And Maya, one of our colleagues who's going to be presenting soon after me, was his student in Banaras and learning German from him. And coincidentally, she ran into him when she saw him in Cambridge, and they both landed up in Cambridge in later years. Tom also developed an interest in Hindi. Like I said, he was a linguist, not just a Sanskrit scholar, but his approach to languages was through grammar. And I once asked Tom how he developed this interest. And he said, once you understand the grammar, you can easily pick up different languages because you can see the connections. And from the grammar, you can jump into all the other aspects of a language. So grammar was Tom's deep interest in any language. And that's why later on, you have him spending so much time in teaching Panini also to those of us who are interested in it. After about 10 years in Banaras, Tom came back to Cambridge to pursue a PhD. And again, to be able to finance himself, he was working in Harvard University, but that took most of his time. And although he was an instructor of Sanskrit in Harvard, he dropped his pursuit of PhD, but continued to maintain his interest in the language and doing his own research there, even though it was not going to lead to a degree. He kept pursuing these different languages that grabbed his interest, taught classes. He also taught Hindi. He developed the Mahabharata group, the discussion group that used to meet at Widener Library. Here you see the picture of Widener Library, and you see the picture of one group of those who were interested in Mahabharata at that time. So this group functioned for quite a long time. They would take up a deep study of Mahabharata section by section, sitting in the library, having access to all the commentaries and all the material that was needed. It was a very extensive library that Tom helped build and maintain. There was nobody else in Widener Library who was interested in the Sanskrit section of that library, and Tom unofficially took charge of that also, and he had access to that library for all the time that he was there. So this was also the time that Bijoy, and he'll be talking about this later, started the Sanskrit table, and that's where I came into contact with Tom when they used to meet at Barker Center. I saw this announcement of a Sanskrit conversational group that used to meet on Tuesdays at Barker Center, and I started attending. And I quickly realized that one cannot make much progress in talking about Sanskrit without a deeper knowledge about the language. And the group also slowly shifted from being a mere conversation group into a group that would pursue different texts. And we used to read texts of different levels, right from Chandamama, a very introductory Sanskrit magazine, up to much higher texts and drama and poetry and readings from the Rig Veda and so on. Tom would make copies for all of us from the library, and we would all sit poring over these while Tom taught us the language through reading these different texts. And so I continued to pursue my interest with Tom on the language part. And that's where I began interacting with him, not just as a colleague who was trying to read a text jointly with him, but trying to learn the language from him. And that's when I discovered these very special skills that I thought Tom possessed as a teacher. And I'm also an academic by profession. I used to be teaching business at Suffolk University. And I'm proud to say that much of what I learned from Tom as a teacher, not just Sanskrit, but as a teacher, I could carry through in how I taught my subjects at Suffolk. And that's what I want to spend a few minutes on, because Tom was not just teaching us Sanskrit, but he was also an instructor of Hindi at Boston University. And he would share with me his experiences in teaching Hindi there. And once a week, Tom would take a train up to Reading, Massachusetts, to discuss Anglo-Saxon with a group there. And he was also associated with the language lab in Cambridge. And people who wanted to read Greek and other languages would also be put in touch with Tom, and Tom would spend time teaching these other languages with them and reading them along with the students. So Tom was a versatile resource to all of us who had language interests, and for me in Sanskrit in particular. And so here I put down my learnings from Tom as a teacher. Because Tom was not a teacher, but we all try to pretend to be facilitators of learning. But in Tom, I saw that in its true form, how he would facilitate your learning. He wasn't trying to teach you what he knew, but he was trying to develop in you the quality of a learner. And so he taught you how to learn. He did not try to teach you. And that was his approach to all his students. And one could see that in the enormous patience that he had in communicating something with you. I used to work with the text, and I would do exercises, and I would bring them to Tom and ask him to correct them. And he would correct them line by line, and he would comment on the mistakes I had made. And the next week, I would turn up with another set of exercises where I had made the same mistake. But Tom never once in all those years told me, I explained this to you last week, or I just told you this in the beginning of today's session. He would just patiently go over it as though that was the first time he was teaching me that grammar principle or that rule that I should follow. Enormous patience. I mean, one didn't know the depths of patience unless you ran into Tom. And so he would keep repeating it. And when he ran into an area that he thought he could expand a little more, he would get up and start writing on the board the etymology of the word, how it developed, how it came from other languages. And you would get a brief lecture about him based on the mistake that you had made. And you could see this approach to learning from Tom in how he graded. I would see some of his grading of the Hindi exercises that students in Boston University had done, and he would keep them with him on the side. And once I looked at those, and I said, Tom, how did you give the student an A? This person has made not a single correct answer in this exercise, and the whole page is full of mistakes. And Tom would say, oh, but they are trying so hard, and I think the person deserves an A for that. So for him, grading and how he approached a student was to motivate them more to learn rather than trying to evaluate what they were doing. He would never evaluate you. He would never judge you. He would just say, what can I do to help you learn? What can I do to motivate you to learn more? And so he would bring the materials that he would choose for you to learn depended on your level. Then, because I was still a beginner, he would find materials that would suit me, which would not suit another person. You'd never be late for a session. He was always a few minutes earlier there. He had the room open, he had the windows open, and he was ready to receive you. And that was also his approach in how he responded to your questions. If you asked him a question, he didn't just give you an answer, but he helped you work through the answer. And he would explain the background to it, he would explain the grammar so that you came up with the answer yourself. And that was his approach to help people learning. And so those are my takeaways from the years that I interacted with Tom. And like I said, I continued from Barker Center into spending more time with him at Cambridge, where he was living in this senior center facility, because we could spend time one-on-one, spent a lot of time together with him. And Paul will talk more about that because he also did that at the same time. And so it was quite a big loss to me when Tom passed, because he wasn't just, like I said, my guru, but he was a mentor, he was a friend, he was an associate, he was something I was proud to know. And so I thank Bijoy, Paul, and the others for putting this together and giving me this chance to reflect again on my association with Tom. And that's something I would never forget, because every time I looked at Sanskrit and I picked up a book on Sanskrit to read, it was Tom that would first appear in my mind. And Tom, I think, is always guiding me. He's always telling me when I look at a sentence, which is the verb. He said, find the verb first, and then you will figure out the rest of the sentence. So, Tom, thank you.
Okay. Um, we can probably do little applause if you like. You can unmute yourself and applaud if you want, right, for each presentation. And we'll have a discussion afterwards for a few minutes. So our next presenter would be Professor. Oh, by the way, Gopinath was teaching here in Suffolk and then joined us, and he's now in California. So we thank him for getting up early and doing this for us. So our next presenter will be Professor Bala Chandra, who also retired professor in Northeastern. So Bala, go ahead.
Thank you. My association started with Tom quite some time ago. Actually, I think maybe 25, 30 years ago. And ever since the Sanskrit table started, I met him first time at the Sanskrit table. Now, how do I go to the next slide, Prem?
He will
Yeah,
do.
I'll go. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
So this is the picture which you have already seen. Only thing is I made an error in this time. It was 1 year ahead. So it was 1934 to 2023, but I guess that's a minor thing. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so I met him at the conversation table in 1995. It was by a chance because I did not know of its existence. And at that time, Bijoy and Yogesh and Tom, they were the leaders. We were about 10 to 12 participants. We met in the Church Street location. And the composition of the group was quite varied. We had some very efficient, proficient people. There was one gentleman from India who had come here to visit, and he was capable of even writing poetry in Sanskrit. And there were others who were very fluent in Sanskrit. And there were some of us who were practically beginners, and we had limited capabilities in Sanskrit. And we had even our temple priest who was very conversant in spoken Sanskrit as well as many of the religious texts. So he also was a part of the group, and we continued like that. And Vijay or Yogesh would take the lead, and we start on a topic, and everybody will speak a couple of sentences, and that's how it continued. Next one, please. So over a period of time, we started losing people. One of the big reasons was it was too inconvenient to come to Harvard Square for people who were living in the suburbs or outside. And some of the people, I think, were feeling lost in the group because the level of Sanskrit was above even their level. So they thought it was a kind of a waste of time. And some people moved to other cities and other countries. And there was the gentleman who was very conversant. He also moved away, and then he later died. So these and other factors made it difficult for the group to continue. Next slide, please. So we only three of us remained finally: Bijoy, Tom, and me. So we had started with the conversation. Then we said, only with three of us, what can we do? So Vijay had suggested, why don't we get into grammar a little bit deeper? And we thought of various proposals, and we decided finally on, instead of starting with Ashtadhyayi, which would be very complicated for us at that stage, Tom suggested that we should start with Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, and we started that, and he got us all copies. He had extra copies of these books, so he got us physical copies of these things. And so we started this and went through each of the sutras according to that. And after we completed that book, we felt a little bit braver. So we said, maybe we should try the next one, try the thing. But before that, I had this slide which said our meetings were nomadic. We met at different places. First, we were meeting at Church Street. Then we went sometime at the School of Divinity. And finally, we focused on Barker Center, and we had that seminar room on the third floor, and that's where we continued. And we changed our meeting from Tuesdays to Thursdays from 7 to 10 p.m. So it was a pretty long meeting, and all of us were able to afford the time, and we continued for quite some time. Next slide, please. So then we said, we have now finished. We wanted to start this thing, and Tom dissuaded us from starting the Ashtadhyayi. Instead, he said we should start with the Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, and he got copies for us. Next slide, please. Now, in the Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. The sutras are arranged in a different order than in the Ashtadhyayi. They make it much more accessible to a novice or a beginner. And many of the complicated sutras from the Ashtadhyayi have been eliminated. And Tom, of course, was the major resource for us, and he provided much of the explanations and references for this discussion. Next, please. Yeah. Then we said, we felt brave. We said, okay, now that we have finished Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, we will attack the big one. So we thought about it, and then we focused on the Ashtadhyayi by Srisha Chandra Vasu, which was written in the late 19th century or 20th century. And we went through that very diligently and very carefully, and we found that one of the things was many of the sutras were not current, but they were all old. And the examples, I'm sorry, not the sutras themselves. Sutras, of course, are the original ones. The examples given for each sutra were quite old. Then Vijay suggested that there is an edition by Professor Ramnath Sharma from Hawaii. And so we got sets of those books. It was in 6 volumes. The volume 1 was introduction and description of the Ashtadhyayi. And so we started in that. And then one of the disappointments was that the examples that Professor Sharma gives were almost the same as the one we had seen in Vasu's books. So, but the explanations were a little bit more elaborate, so we could get into that in much greater detail. Next slide, please. So once we finished that, I don't know whether we became experts in Sanskrit grammar, but at least we could understand some of it. So we finished that, and then we said, what do we do? And then Vijay had a great interest in the language and in how the language originates in the brain. That was his great interest. So Tom suggested that we should look at Bhartrihari's Vakyapadiya. So again, we had no printed copies in those days. So Tom would, from his copy, he would make copies at the library and bring it to us. And we went through that. That was very fascinating for me because it went a little bit into the science of how the sound originates in the brain, which is what Bijoy's great interest was, how the sound originates in the brain, and then how it is communicated, how it is received by the listener. These details were very nicely explained there. This was written quite some time ago, and they had the insight to look at these kinds of pictures. So we looked at that. And in addition to that, Tom would always bring some copies of other texts, and we would go over them. Next slide, please. So we had a great time. We met every day, and we look forward to meeting this because of the discussions we had before, discussions we had at the end, and even discussions along when we are discussing the individual sutras, individual stanzas. So then he became immobile, and we visited him a couple of times in Cambridge in his retirement home, and then he was moved to Sancta Maria in Cambridge, and Bijoy and myself, and I'm sure others also would drop in occasionally and talk to him. The thing that I was very impressed was his mind was still very alive and active, and he would be ready to discuss anything that we wanted to talk about when we visited him. So we visited him quite a few times, and we used to take some Indian food, and he always loved Indian food. So we had some fun times with that. And so next slide, is there any? Yes. That's it. So I was not in Boston all the time, so I was also traveling around. So I had much less opportunities than Bijoy had to see him more often, and I miss him very much. We had a great time. A couple of times we went out for dinner together, he and I, and it was very enjoyable. And I really miss him. It was very nice to have been associated with him for so long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bala. Again, by people, if you want to unmute yourself and a round of applause. I must admit that Bala himself is not in great health. He has been recovering from different kinds of problems, and we're so glad that he could join and make out the slides. Stick on, we will discuss a bit. So Paul, why don't you continue? Paul, do you have your slides?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending where you are. My journey was through Sanskrit and meeting Tom. And in the early 2000s, I went to a yoga teaching school, not to learn to teach yoga, but to develop a practice. And it was with John Featherstone and Diane Featherstone in Princeton, Mass. John taught us the Bija sutras. We chanted them a lot. And throughout the course, it was like a 2-year course on the weekends. And after that, I asked John, how do I learn Sanskrit? And he directed me to Bijoy at the Lakshmi Temple. And I started to go to classes on Saturdays, I believe, or Sunday mornings, I think, for a couple of hours. Took a number of classes there. But as you can imagine, for a Westerner learning Sanskrit, it was very difficult. There's Bijoy and Tom at a lunch. So I needed help. And through Bijoy and the Ancient Studies Institute in Cambridge, I met Tom and began a very long and very fruitful learning experience. As others have mentioned, Tom helped me tremendously, learning so much. His vast depth and vastness of what he knew just astounded me. It was like I could bring up just about any subject in conversation, and I would learn from him. I just have my notebook in front of me. I would meet with him. Let's see. So it was in the late. It was around 2004. Let's say I met him, and around this notebook I have dated in 2009. I probably have other notebooks, but I just happened to pick up this notebook. We read tremendously, and he tailored my education, as Gopi mentioned, in what I needed at that particular point. For example, we're discussing philosophy. I just opened the page here in my notebook, and I have a note, doctrine of afflictions, doctrine of figures, see Plato's modes in the Republic, and this corresponds to India's ragas. And he mentions Manfred Klein and things like that. If I turn to another page, he talked about I can't say it, Theosophy, and he told me about Madame Blavatsky and Anne Besset, yes, and led me to Krishnamurti. I read Krishnamurti for a while. So it's just amazing what we did. I worked with him for about, I think, over 10 or 12 years. We would meet in the morning. He before he moved to Cambridge, he moved into housing, elderly housing there, and he spent some time while he was waiting there. He moved in and stayed with me in Air, Massachusetts, but that was quite a trek for him to go into Cambridge. So he eventually did get the housing in Cambridge. And when he moved into Cambridge, I moved into Somerville, about 3 blocks or 4 blocks from him. Had an apartment. It was right on the route, the bus line, the 91 bus, and I would get up about 5:45, and there was a bus about 5:50, and I get to Tom's about 6:05 in the morning, and we would start and read. We read so much Sanskrit and other things too. We did some syntax, Chomsky syntax books and things like that. Wonderful education. It's just unbelievable the education that he provided and what he taught me. And we read Raghu Vangsha. We read Kuntala. All Layman's books. I have notes here from Layman on the derivation of Bhavati. Oh, and Indo-European. I just turned the page and opened to my notebook, where he's showing me Indo-European and the correspondence with Shun, the dog, and the S, the Shun, changed to a C, a canis in looks like, and then Haun in German. So any page I open to in my notebook. Here's Layman's page 56, 3 and 4, and showing the whole derivations, the sutras of derivation of exercise there. So this is talking about his later years. We had this wonderful opportunity to go to India together. And again, it was such an educational experience for me. This is just off the internet. It's not the actual route we took, but it was very close to the route we took. We took about 2 weeks, and we flew into Bangalore and rented a driver and car the Sanskrit Bharati organization in Bangalore helped us, and we plotted this wonderful trip around all the major temples in southern India. And Tom worked it out for me, and provided where to go and the details. We stopped in Pondicherry at the French Institute for Sanskrit there. I bought some wonderful derivations of Pandini. So it was this trip. We circumambulated the southern tip and went through Kerala and all this. So wonderful memories of that. Wonderful seeing all those temples and everything along those lines. So that not only did I get a education, a general education in philosophy, world literature, and grammar. Grammar was definitely his interest and focus, and also mine. I'm trained as a mathematician, so we tried to. And it took me a long time to really understand grammar, and Tom guided me. But the turning point was, if I can, I'm going to switch to something that Tom and I worked on together. And this is just to show you this wonderful mathematical approach that we came up with. And my training is in graph theory and category theory. So we wanted to draw graphs. He would always diagram sentences. But diagramming didn't always make sense to me. But this is the Ishopanishad that we worked on together. You can see here that we went through it. And on the left is the English, the Sanskrit, and on the right was the English. So what we were trying to do was map the sentences from Sanskrit into English. And we went through you can see this, and subclauses. We could get into some details at some point. But you can see we went through the whole, and there was the shortest one, so we did that. And we used different technologies. I'm just skimming through it here. But we used the Sanskrit libraries, XML. We used the Sanskrit heritage site. We used a natural language AI, Spacey. This was a few years ago, and a categorical language theory. So just to give you a flavor of this, and we're doing that. I'm not quite sure why it's doing this, but here's a few more pictures. This was at one of his birthday celebrations. This is Paul Anders from the Institute
Ancient Studies.
Yeah, yes, thank you. And here's Tom in his later years. I'd just like to end my talk with something we wrote. Tom helped me write this for his 80th birthday. We're working on this, what we call the Sara Ishtajayi, the essence of the Ishtajayi. And this was a picture of him and that. But we just wanted to, we praise you, Tom, your outstanding contribution in teaching languages, and in particular Sanskrit and many other things. And we'd like to also mention here the example you provided as a true world citizen, illuminating the contribution of languages offered, illuminating the contribution of language that offered to make the world better and enlightened by reason. The world needs more people like you, Tom. We hope to continue to spread your message by following the way you lived, including the principles that you taught us and the examples of the way you lived your life. And I'd like to end my talk there. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. The people who want to unmute and applause. Paul has been my collaborator in all these efforts and so on. So, and Paul was a caregiver to Tom in his last years. So next is, I'll invite Maya. Maya knows him. Is Maya around?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. Maya De. So she knew him in 1967 Varanasi. So be brief and do your story.
Yeah. I met Tom, Professor Thomas Burke, as we used to call in Varanasi in those days. He was teaching, I was a librarian there, and he was teaching German and French there. So I joined his German class to learn some German. And I took 1 year of German with him. And within a first or second class, I think, I realized how great teacher he was. We were trying he was trying to teach us how to pronounce umlaut, and none of us were able to do that correctly. So he left the class for a couple of minutes and came back with a mirror. And he put that mirror in front of us, and he said, pronounced umlaut, and asked us to imitate him. And then we all could do it. And I was so impressed that I have had many good teachers, great teachers, but no one like exactly Tom. He was such a higher level teacher. And I had an opportunity to meet him again after several years when I came to Cambridge in United States. And that was, I think, in 1976, when I met him by chance in MIT. In those days, it was before VCR and DVDs. So people, especially Indian people and the India lovers, they all gathered on Sunday in MIT for some Hindi movie usually. And everyone enjoyed. And I was sitting with my husband and my 3-4-year-old son. And then I saw someone who looked like Tom from back. And he was sitting 2-3 rows ahead of me. And I thought, shall I go and try to talk to him, if it is Tom? And then I said, if he's not, then what happens? Then I said, I will say sorry. So I went there. And as soon as he saw me, he just got up and said, Miss Chakravarti, that was my maiden name. Both of us were really delighted to meet each other. And then I always kept track of him. And after 1 or 2 years, I think I was trying to do further study at Simmons College for my library science master's degree. And they wanted recommendations from someone who knew me as a student. And by chance, I found Tom. So I asked him whether he can write that to them. And he did. And I got admitted there for my master's study. So he was so helpful for everyone, not only me. I think he would do that for everyone, whichever way is possible for him. So that is one thing. And then several years passed, and I studied Sanskrit in Banaras University when I was doing my undergraduate. So I knew Sanskrit, basic Sanskrit, but I loved to study Sanskrit, especially the literature, kavyas and all those things. One of my favorite is Kumar Shambhav Kavya. And anyway, so I discovered that they are studying basic Sanskrit in Church Street, a group. They call themselves Sambhashana Sabha. They try to talk in Sanskrit, but they probably started in 92, but I joined in 1994. And every class, usually people will say but 2-3 sentences, but no one could say more than that, except Tom. And so we finally decided to reading very easy Sanskrit books. So as Gopi was mentioning, Chanda Mama and everything. So very easy texts were we started reading. And then later, that study group moved to Burke Center in 1994, and it continued till the last day, the Sambhashana Sabha. And I was there always. It was not that much needed for my Sanskrit, but I always like to join anything that Tom, where Tom is joining, because if you were around Tom, you'd always learn something new. So I always came for that group, and later, I think they started studying at the wider Mahabharata, original Mahabharata in Sanskrit, and they started probably around 94, but I was working, so I was not able to come at that time when they were studying. Later, they shifted it, their timing, like 5 o'clock. So I used to go for Sambhashana Sabha for 3 to 5. And then I started joining the Mahabharata group. And because Mahabharata was one of my favorite books, and I got a chance to read it with some other scholars who knew Sanskrit. So we were like 5-6 people were there. Peter Barnos, or what is his last name, and Kevin McGrath, Tom, myself, and Susan. I can't remember her last name. So we were 5-6 people, and it was a great group, and it was so much fun and educational. Like it is, we really had to study because you cannot just read the sloka and translate it. It's not that easy unless you practice it. So we used to be ready for the thing. And always Tom started reading the first sloka, and everybody counted for which one is coming for me then. Depending on sitting position. So in mind, I will be ready for my sloka. And so since I prepared, it was a lot of fun. And we did that till like 2019, before Corona. And so that started. And by that time, I knew another part of Tom because I was living in Cambridge in Inman Square area, and he started living in the senior center there for the older people in Cambridge. And it is a little long walk, but if I wanted to, I could have walked to his house. And so he was living there since what happened, like it was 2020 already. My husband was sick and I was taking care of him. And I already learned from another friend, I think probably Bijoy, that Tom is moving to Oregon. And then it was such a shock and big news for me. So I just left home and went to his house to talk to him. And I asked him, and he did say that he's planning to move to Oregon. And then with other friends like Bijoy and Gopi, we discussed about it, and we realized that it is his imagination, and actually the dementia started. So that was a very upsetting news for all of us. And I kept contact of him regularly because I realized probably he's not eating well. So since I was very close, I try to take at least his food. He loved Indian food. So whatever I made, I would at least go once a week and leave some food so that he can have dinner for at least 2 days. So it continued till like November of 2020. And by that time, he needed to move to Santa Maria. And we all know after that. So I really sincerely thank him, Tom, for too many things. And I still miss him. And I always miss him. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Very good. We are good that many of our speakers are there. So we just wanted to, the idea was to check how we did, what we did. This was an effort to memorialize a man, where many of this kind of discussion did take place. Most evenings, we will talk at random to find out how things happen. We never recorded those things. But I thought in memory of those, we can recreate those evenings. So that was the idea. So we had 5. What we'll do is the next hour, we will discuss various things that we heard. Peter, you want to take a stab what you heard in the last 2 days, and also you want to say something about Tom?
Yeah, I liked Gowrie's paper. That's quite interesting. And well, all of the papers have been quite interesting. Science is not my strong suit, so I didn't quite understand the last one, but they've all been quite nice. And yeah, I'd like to read Gowrie's paper in more detail because it's one of those sort of sound is such an important element in Sanskrit, being an oral tradition and the whole idea of Namarupa. So it's interesting that someone has
Speak a bit about also yourself and your exploration in Sanskrit.
Well, yeah, I'm sort of more interested in the papers that have been discussed. But yeah, I think this has been quite a good celebration of Tom's life. It's certainly I liked also Paul's account. I like to see that the paper you wrote with Tom on the Ishopanishad. That was quite interesting. I'd never quite seen that type of a diagram. So it's if you have a copy of that, I'd like to see that. That was quite interesting. Okay, yeah, it was really quite interesting. I've never seen anybody break it down that way. Yeah, those are my comments, and certainly Professor Aklujkar, Ashok, that was great to hear him again. I didn't realize he was also a student of my professor, Professor Ingalls, obviously many years before me, and I didn't know he was such an expert on Bhartahari. So yeah, I'll have to look into his research. I did see a festschrift that was prepared while I was in India on him. I think it's quite an interesting collection of essays honoring his life's work. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Good. And when did you were you a student with Ingalls?
Oh, God, 100 years ago.
Long
Yeah,
life.
don't even ask. Yeah, it was a long time ago. That's actually how I met Tom. I had had a semester of or I had a year of introductory Sanskrit with Gary Tubb, and the first semester we got halfway through uh, Perry's Primer, which was written in the 19th century, and it's quite abstruse, but that was the only grammar that was available at the time. And then the second semester we worked on Landman's Reader, but after that I started working with Professor Ingalls for many years, and I went to his study once in Widener Stacks and said, uh, Perry's Primer really didn't do it for me. It was just kind of a mass of complicated rules and whatnot. So I said, how can I straighten everything out? He said, well, someone you could work with is Tom Burke. He really knows his grammar. That's a direct quote from Ingalls, which is high praise from coming from Professor Ingalls. And he said, here's his address. He doesn't have a phone. I said, oh, that's my kind of a guy, no phone. Because I had been studying in Europe for 3 years before that with no phone. And I thought, yeah, that's sounds like a great guy, no phone. And so, interesting enough, he lived around the corner from me. And so I went to his house, and so we started working together. I was paying him by the hour, and we'd meet, I think, at least once a week, going over Sanskrit grammar. And at one point, we even started on Hindi. But after about 7 lessons, I told Tom, I said, this is just kind of like bad Sanskrit. Let's go back to Sanskrit, and then later I took 2.5 years of Urdu Hindi. But yeah, at the time, it was basically Sanskrit. And he certainly clarified the whole grammatical situation for me. And we became fast friends since we were both interested in foreign films and attended all of Satyajit Ray's films. He's my favorite Indian director, and many European foreign films. He was quite an expert on that. So yeah, it's I think I can't say enough about Tom. This is a great idea you've had.
Thank you, Peter. So let us see who else want to say anything. Is Kushagra back at all? No. Markandeshwar, you want to say something? Or any of this? Avijit, did you hear? I just want to see who can really sum up. Avijit, you want to give a tab, different papers that you heard and what we did, pluses, minuses. Are you around, Avijit?
Sir, I have nothing to say. Just I am happy to be part of this event, sir.
Okay, very good. Anybody else want to comment on the Gauri? Did you say something?
No, it's just that I am so happy to be a part of this session for both the days. All the papers were so informative and they were really engaging. And I mean, of course, I could not understand every single part of every single paper because I'm new to this. But I will try to read up more and more on all topics. They were really interesting. Also, one more thing, I'm just wanted to express my gratitude towards the organizing committee for including me in this symposium. This was my very first time trying to write something like this, and yeah, so I plan on, of course, reading more and more and trying to write more and more, but the first is always a special time. So thank you so much for including me in this symposium. Really,
you did very well. Did very well. Did really well. She was very modest. She said, like, what shall I do and so on, but I think you did pretty well. Good. Anybody else want to say anything? Deva Patnaik, you want to say something? As an observer, did you hear many papers? How about Paul? Paul, how did you do? Paul was Paul was one of our co-planners. So, Paul, do you think we met the expectation? Where are you?
Yes.
Okay, all
Right
right.
here.
How do you
Right.
rate? Would Tom be happy about this?
Oh, I'm sure he would be. I think this was in the spirit of Tom's teaching, and to include and discuss many aspects. So I think it's not that I think he would be. I think he is happy.
So Tom would
Anyway,
have been present in this audience and would have appreciated.
who knows? Maybe he is in this
Right.
audience.
Right.
Anyway, we hope all is well. So thank you, Bejoy. You were the guiding light here and the
No, no.
inspiration
There's a
behind it.
Tom's friend. As I
Uh,
said before, I just happened to meet him in Harvard Square.
Yeah.
I was going to, I was in MIT. I had come to check a seminar, a Urdu seminar. There's a
Mm,
professor here called Anne Marie Schimmel. She was a Urdu professor, and that was the last year they said he was teaching the Urdu class.
mm,
So I was coming to Urdu as a language has interested because musical. So I thought I will hear her. And
mhm,
then I came to Harvard Square, and it was supposed to be in a junior common room in one of the dormitories on the river.
mm,
I think Emerson Hall. So I did not, nobody tells me where it is. So I kind of come down from the train. I'm walking here and there. I'm telling them, nobody says. So I am kind of walking, and then I saw Tom with his with an umbrella with him. It's like a little, stocky man with an umbrella. Then I said I can probably stop him. Oh, because other people also would not stop for me because I had an accent. It is like a long time ago, and
mm,
what he's talking about and so on. So Tom, then I asked him that, do you know where this place is? Then he says, I'll take you there. That is
mm,
exact words. So I said, what do you mean he takes me there? Where this
mm,
place is? So he didn't say that I'm also going to the seminar. So
mm,
I'll take you there. So we went. And when we were going through, see, this is my first entry to the Harvard dormitory. So when it goes to this complicated maze kind of operations, I'm getting
mm,
suspicious.
mm,
Because where is it taking me? I'm taking you there. Like the different doors are there, different gates are there, getting darker inside. So then finally we arrived in the second floor of some room. And then this lady was there. I did not know who the lady would be so old.
mm.
So, but anyway, so that was, I spent hour and a half with there. And then Tom brought me back from the maze to the road. And then I think he said a telephone, said I'd be in touch with me and so on. I was in touch. So like that. So that friendship, which was kind of one of the first things as I came out of my campus to the road, and somebody on the road met me and took me as a friend. So
Yeah.
that was my American journey. That is, MIT is a more closed campus. You don't
Mhm,
go out much except grocery or something.
mm.
And so like that. And so he made a friend, and then I made other friends and so on. But in that sense, he was my first out of the campus friend. So this is a
Yeah.
memory we did. All right, okay. And then, of course, he come out as a lovely man, gentleman. You never could explore how gentle he is. And then eventually when we found that he's broke, and that bothered me. That is, why should good people be broke?
Mhm,
That is, they're not rewarded enough. They don't keep enough. They don't prepare themselves for the bad days. So whether that's a human condition or that's a part of nobility, I could not determine. I spent 2 weeks in cleaning his apartment and saw his beautiful, beautiful work. Man, his collections, his notes, his books, his music. So he has spent all his money in doing this and has gotten broke. So, but so that's how it is. My point is that's the human state. Somebody said bhava and kriya, so that's a human state. So that human state, I thought we'll bring together to some kriya.
I just wanted to add an anecdote to your statements. I was commuting between San Diego and Boston, and he once told me that he has a collection of books in the storage in LA, and to go and pick it up for him. He had been keeping those books for about 30, 35 years, paying a monthly rent of probably $100, and he had never touched them. So I went, I did not know what to do with all those books. So I finally found somebody in the University of California, San Diego. He said he will take it. I said, please take them. It was a whole compartment full of books that he had brought all the way from India in a shipping crate, and it was just unloaded there. He never went back to check them again. So that was how when Vijay said he was broke, he said that was how he was spending his money, buying books after books after
Yeah.
Well, I can say something about that. That must have been on the West Coast, but
Yes.
here on the East Coast, he and I once had a discussion about how many incredible books there are by Indian publishers that you just don't even know about here. And so he told me that he had taught. He was quite a linguist, obviously. He had taught Hindi. No, he had taught German in Hindi at the Sampurnand Sanskrit University in Varanasi, I think for 7 or 9 years. And when he finally came back, he told me he brought 17 like steamer trunks, literally 17 steamer trunks full of books, and that they were in a Somerville storage unit. And at one point he said, well, I told the guy at what was Raven Bookstore, which is really the worst as far as money. They're really cheap. They're not in Harvard Square anymore, but he said, yeah, I gave him the key and told him to, sell whatever he could. And he said the guy was just so overcome by the dust that he only ended up taking a fraction of it. And I did see some of it in the store, and I said, gee, Tom, you should have told me about it. I would have given you a higher price for whatever he took. And I have an idea that the guy probably just threw out the rest. I mean, Tom seemed to indicate that the guy was just overwhelmed by both the dirt and the volume. And of course, they're all, to a Westerner, probably pretty obscure books in Hindi and Sanskrit and who knows what else. But yeah, that's when Tom told me that, I said, wow, that's incredible. But you can easily go that route when you walk through Motilal Banarsidass and some of the other great book publishers in India. It's like, oh, I've got to have that. I've got to have this. Where can I possibly get it in the US? I mean, there was a place in the US that used to sell them, but the markup was ridiculous, and so I guess Tom just said, well, I'll just bring them over by boat. So that's what he did.
Yeah, very good. Anybody else? Premji, you want to share any experience? How did you not, you have not met Tom before, have you?
No, I met Tom.
Okay.
And once I think I dropped him from some program which you, I think, conducted, and he came. So he wanted to be dropped. So I dropped him at some place, I think Alewife, railway station. And that's the only interaction I think I had. I mean, very brief, 15, 20 minutes of driving. That's about it.
How did you see the conference? Like, do you think we did?
Yeah, I think we did very well in the sense that some of these papers, Aniket's paper, Gauri Datta's paper, I think are even Abhijit Mandal, that Kriya and Bhava analysis. They're very promising. Dr. Dubey must have, their work must have been very great. Some reason we have not been able to properly expose. But I'll be very happy to understand those papers which they have presented and the analysis which they have done, because I think that could be very, very useful. I mean, somebody is talking about mind and brain, I mean, first time, I guess. I mean, there are many people have talked, but as a neuroscientist, yeah. So that was very interesting.
The Kushagra has come.
Oh, yeah.
Kushagra, you want to share your views? Kushagra is a young Sanskrit scholar, and I think I had asked him to observe how you are doing and maybe be critical the way you saw it.
Yes, thank you very much for having me yesterday and also for letting me join today. I think the session has been great. Very wide variety of papers were read. Sorry, I'm off camera because I actually had to go and walk outside for a bit. But it was great to see Prem Nagarji's presentation, Gauriji's presentation as well. It is really a testament to the wide variety of subjects and people that the late Tom touched, and I'm very grateful. I hope that this symposium becomes an annual event and also happens next year.
Good point. Annual event, yes. Yes, I think probably more people will. Yeah, I think we'll try. We'll try. We'll try. We'll try.
Bela is here. Can we talk?
Yeah, he might not have seen all paper. Yeah, Bela, you have a comment at all?
Brain and Mind, he may have seen that paper.
So, yeah, I haven't heard the
last paper,
the presentation, because I had to work something else. Very interesting. What I've listened to the
Your video is not coming up.
discussion with the blue skirt guy with Bijoy and you about the mind. He told that the mind is the function of the brain, which is true. And it is very interesting that hardly we can say more about this than 100 years ago. Anatomist and neurologist told the same sentence. So it's a very difficult, complicated issue. We have to work a lot, and I think that many people are eager to discover some essential characters of the brain, which has a function of the mind. So it's could be very interesting further to continue this symposium series. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Anybody else has any comments on Tom or on Symposium? Any particular paper?
VVK Shastri may have something to say.
Is he around?
Let me see.
I think he left.
No, he left, yeah.
Right. I think hopefully all your people kind of bring up new papers next time. And for the young researchers like Avijit and Gauri, mm, so comments were made and you can probe further. Like Abhava is an excellent concept. So how a state appears, Paul said, and state becomes action. The question is whether a state always becomes an action or not. So I think as Prem presented yesterday, so the bhavas from Natya Shastra, they exist, and which BBK also told this morning, Gotva. So Gotva exists. So that doesn't become a jati. So it's a purely a qualitative quality, a property. So that's the bhava. So then how does the bhava become a kriya? And does it become a kriya? So I think Abhijit has a whole handful of material to work on. And Gauri has more material to work on. I think, see, there is a whole field of psychophysics on why we like something. So the question is how neurological it is, whether Shwara is a resonance. And are you a singer? Are you a vocalist?
No, sir. No.
Try it though.
Mm.
Try some. You're a Marathi. I think some Marathi people are great singers. So try to explore your voice. You are young, so you can do this and then see what happens. And then something good you will discover. You know what I mean? What is really happening? You know what I mean? And we may support you if you want to explore on this as a common research project and so on for your learning. We will try to find resource so that you can, because my interest has been that how does this Vedic stutis connect to objects? They call it Sam. So which means that the sun may be able to hear. So how does the sun hear? What is sun's speech? What is his vibration? So the question is, naturally, the sun doesn't listen, so doesn't hear, but I try my best. So that is where I stretch myself. And so all that research has not been done. So hopefully you will do. And what else? Kushagra did a beautiful work. I think that law thing. Kushagra is a jungle, is a part of that law also?
I'll have to look into that. The word jungle actually appears as Jangal in the Mahabharata
Right.
for Kuru Jangala.
Kuru Jangala, right.
That and I think it is contrasted with areas which are densely populated.
Okay.
Most likely the city, the Pur or the Nagar,
Mm,
versus the sparsely populated areas called Jangal. So
yeah.
we'll have to look into that. And obviously that word has been adopted in Hindi and
Right.
other Indian languages as a word for forest.
Right. From whatever we are studying this Vedas, what I see is that every sound, so when you say the law and caw may be synonymous or maybe used in a similar fashion, that may be true, but neurologically they're not true. That's what we think. That is the spectrum of sounds that we can produce, the harmonics that we can produce, they have each a meaning. And that meaning connotes to some event in space, in the universe. The question is whether they can be combined, whether we can't perceive them, because they may be so subtle that we ignore the difference. But that doesn't mean neurologically they don't happen. So it could be that neurologically things are very discrete. All events are measured completely and known completely. But then it comes to the muscles and so on. Many of them get suppressed because they get filtered. So we don't notice them. And then it becomes more gross. So that's what I wanted to suggest to you to think, that this whole, when you were trying to do suffixes or prefixes from the sound point of view, we have to see how are they produced possibly, and the meaning of them from an internal point of view, not from the dictionary point of view. Dictionaries are kind of done later. So I've not studied them very well, but I'm studying them now to see how is sound produced. For example, la. So la has a neurological origin. So what that origin may be. So we shall see. I'll talk to you more about that.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense. It
anybody?
seems to be that these have originated in different, potentially parallel traditions, and over time they have been connected in the tradition. Some of it has been acknowledged, for example, la and da, ra and da, even in the first line of the Rig Veda, Agni Mire Purohitam. Instead of the r sound there, you can also have the la sound.
Yeah, I
Both are
think,
acceptable.
right. So those are all
So
kind of gross baikari. The question inner of the question is when you are having neurologically inside of you.
Yes.
So it is la and only la. For the law manifests as a da, or sometimes this thing, that's a different question.
It was perhaps in different traditions
Yeah.
that they had these different pronunciations, and over time people did recognize the ka suffix was given a formal treatment in Panini, but for the la suffix, a very convoluted method was designed through various different means, and they don't lead to a satisfactory answer. So that was the object of my paper, to try to explain all those disparate cases.
See,
In
what
fact,
my task for the summary is to check at least few of the suffixes and see whether a neural ensemble can be identified for these permanent structures, because these are permanent. They are not happening as we speak. They are brain structures. Ila, you said yesterday. So how they form and what are the anatomical formations in the brain that will say, hey, look, so this thing, that is, suppose you want to expand something. Suppose something has come larger quantity. Suppose something is very intense. So instead of counting, but you have this neural structure that you can apply. And that neural structure eventually, when it's connected to the previous neural structures, that becomes a blob, a cluster, which becomes a sound nucleus. So the question then is that how many of these primitive neural ensembles exist? Panini has some, but there could be more.
Correct.
And your law thing is one of those. So that could be, what I mean? And then we have to find out, though, that what is the limit for the human being or the living species, that these things they must need for their survival, for their understanding, for cognition. And so some kind of boundary value problem to be attempted.
Right.
So we shall see. I'll be in touch with you to check what we can do. Anybody else want to say anything? Markandesh, I thought you want to say anything at all? You have been here since yesterday. Markandesh Panda, he's like a multi-language linguist.
Yes, I listen to all the talks,
Good.
but I'm not really not an expert. So whatever I got is good for me only. So I can't express how I liked it.
Okay.
But such meetings are really beneficial for me.
Good. Good that you could come in spite of ill health and everything. You could join. We're grateful. And who else wants to? Who is else? Yes, Peter, Paul, Kushagra, Bela. Oh, Deva Patnaik, are you here? You want to say something?
I'm sorry. Who are we talking to?
There is Deva Patnaik. He's a friend of mine.
Devaji, are you there?
Not there.
Mm.
Okay, all right. So I think let us. So nobody else is Ritaji. Ritaji has left.
She has left. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Bala has to say something. Bala has not.
Bala. Bala, did you think we portray Tom properly? Balaji.
He's also not there, I guess.
Okay, so let's close. It's getting late. Mother's Day. All right. So let me thank you all. Thank you all for joining in and this first effort of ours. So Peter, Paul, Prem, Bela, Deva, so whosoever here, Avijit, Gauri, and Kushagra, Professor Dubey, all people in India. We thank you all joining us. And we'll be, like as we said before, we will try to, if you give us finished papers, we'll try to create a proceedings. And once we get the finished paper proceedings, so we have said we'll give you a small honorarium for your effort, for preparation of the paper, basically. All right. So with that, so let us conclude. As a friend to Tom, will Bala have the last word?
Yeah, I don't know what the last word, but I
So
appreciate
you're
it
the
all.
oldest here, and has been.
Yeah, that
We
I can
admire
say.
your fight with life and being here and laughing about it.
And bless us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It has been a fun meeting. Bijay, you did a great job. You assembled a good number of papers for this occasion, and they were very interesting, although there were some confusions in some places, but by and large it was a very interesting thing, and I hope we'll be able to continue this annually. uh, you know I'm sure we
course.
can get a bigger audience, bigger participation. I'm sure this can grow into a much better thing. And finally, Tom, I miss him quite a bit. I remember him a lot of times, plenty of times. He was a great friend of mine. We when Vijay was not there or something like that, we used to go out for dinner, and it was very nice going out with him, and we miss him. And yeah, Vijay, thank you very much for this thing. And you can now close the ceremony or whatever you can do for that.
Will you all bless Bala for wishing him good health?
I don't know.
He's already 85 and so on, fighting diseases. So
I'm
Bala,
87.
as a friend to
87?
Tom.
87.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
You're doing wonderful.
I don't know.
He's fighting disease. All right, with that, until next year, to all Tom's friends, be well and join us, hopefully next year, May, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.